So a flow state, when we talk about that, is something that everybody experiences at some point in their life. Most people not that often, but high level sports people regularly. And a flow state, so Ayrton Senna described it beautifully. He said, in one race, he said, it felt like both myself and the car became one. In other words, there was no distinction between Ayrton Senna, the human, and the car, the machine. They were one. There was no thought. Johnny Wilkinson in this country is a famous rugby player, and he helped us win the World Cup in 2003. And I heard him describe this. He didn't describe it as a flow state, but I knew that what he was talking about. He was talking to Bear Grylls, and he was saying, so Bear Grylls had asked him, what was it like when you did that final kick? So by the way, this kick was a drop goal at the end, and it won us the game. It was incredible, perfectly timed. And he said, when I dropped the ball for the kick, at that point, I felt like I'd left my body. But I knew, even before I kicked the ball, that it was going to go between the posts. He said, I knew, absolutely 100%. I didn't know how I knew that, but I knew it. And I didn't feel like I had control over what was going on, but it was all happening there. And he said what was interesting, as soon as the ball went between the posts, only when the crowd cheered and all of his teammates rushed towards him, did he then suddenly feel like he'd gone back into his body and he was able to enjoy the moment. That is a flow state. It's when you feel like you have control over time. Everything is going your way and you know nothing can take you out of it. It is this incredible feeling where everything is in flow. And what's going on is your brainwave pattern changes. It gets close to kind of a gamma brainwave pattern. And it's an incredible moment. Everybody should experience it, because when you're in that state, life is amazing. But you don't always know it necessarily. You almost have this blinkered tunnel vision. Anyway, so what we've now got via the Flow Code and the Flow Global Initiative are protocols and practices that when you practice them regularly, you will not only encourage more of those flow state moments, but also create more flow in general. And what we mean by that is where things are just going well for you, where you end up having opportunities thrust upon you that perhaps they were thrust upon you before, you just didn't recognize them. You have a positive conversation with somebody here that results in something over there. Wherever your journey's taking you, it feels very smooth. But this is something that would happen naturally had it not been for the fact that we've created all these blockages. So blockages from toxicity, blockages from the way we live in our Western world, the material need, the commitment to job, the expectations of others, our own expectations. But if you work at practices that remove all of that, you then start heading into flow, and that's what I teach, along with those various other things.
Yeah, there's this. I'm also seeing like it connects to some of the other stuff we've talked about, where sometimes like more effort, right? Bringing in like more tension and trying harder is very counterproductive, because it takes you out of that, or it removes the possibility of getting into such a flow state. And one of the ways I think about this is that almost your conscious thinking, so it's like what you think of as me, and the me voice in my head has a relatively narrow bandwidth. There's not that much I can process consciously. And clearly, like unconsciously, I can process a lot more. And that's pretty clear. Like the typical example of this is learning how to drive a car, where when you're doing it consciously, it's totally overwhelming. Way too many things to think about, and you have to use your hands and feet, and you're all over the place. And it's the whole process of learning how to drive a car is outsourcing it to your subconscious. You have to let your subconscious do this, because you just don't have enough. Like the narrow focus, the laser focus of your attention is just not suitable for this task. And I think that, like what you described with this, almost like out of body experience, it's like that conscious part is just like, I have no job here. And you start experiencing just the vast complexity of everything else that's going on. And it indeed feels like that's not me that's doing this, because it's not that, like it's almost like you have this little pilot like sitting in your prefrontal cortex, or who thinks he's always in charge, but it's like no, actually
absolutely,
you're not that important.
That's it. And in fact, you've hit the nail on the head there with the PFC. Transient hypofrontality is when you slow down the prefrontal cortex. And it's that in that prefrontal cortex when that analytical mind kicks in, isn't it? When the monkey mind keeps chatting away, saying you're not good enough, or that negative introspection, or whatever it might be. If you can slow this down, the prefrontal cortex, you've got this huge machine ready and waiting to take over, which actually is already doing a shed load of stuff anyway. But if you give it that control, I mean, the car analogy there is perfect. If you're driving on a journey from point A to point B, you don't need the conscious brain. It's the subconscious brain that does it, as you say. So therefore, that can be quite a relaxing experience if it weren't for the fact that we're always thinking about other things that kick in. But that's often when, the brainwave pattern is different when you're in that state. It's, in clinical hypnotherapy, we guide people into a theta-controlled state when they're on the couch, because that's when your brain is more malleable. You're open to suggestion, which is why you use suggestible language in hypnotherapy. And quite often, with flow, with hypnotherapy, with binaural beats, if you ever listen to binaural beats or isochronic tones, it's all about changing your brainwave pattern to a state where it's far more efficient at the task at hand, be it the task being going to sleep or the task being needing to focus. You can take control of this now and direct it to where you want it to go.